Hey everyone. Tonight we begin not with a Hollywood hero wielding a perfect sword, but with a filthy, lice-ridden warrior vomiting over the side of a longship. The salt spray stings his face, his hands are cracked and bleeding, and he hasn't bathed in 3 months. This is not the Viking you see on TV. This is not Ragnar Lothbrok with perfect teeth and a chiseled jawline. This is the real thing, raw, brutal, and utterly unforgiving. The Viking Age, roughly 793 to 1066 AD, is often romanticized as a time of noble warriors, epic voyages, and honorable combat. But strip away the Hollywood veneer, and you'll find something far more disturbing and fascinating. A society built on violence, slavery, and survival, where children were exposed to die if they were weak, where women could be as ruthless as men, where warriors ate psychoactive mushrooms before battle and believed dying in bed was a fate worse than death itself. If forgotten truths of history keep you curious, like and subscribe and tell me, what aspect of Viking life do you think has been most distorted by popular culture? Before we dive in, get comfortable. Seriously. Adjust your pillows, grab that blanket, maybe dim the lights. This is going to be a long journey through the frozen fjords, blood-soaked battlefields, and smoky longhouses of the Viking world. And trust me, you'll want to be settled in. Chapter 1. Waking up in the Viking Age. The year is 885 AD. You open your eyes in complete darkness. Not the darkness of a modern bedroom where a little light seeps under the door or from a digital clock. This is absolute, suffocating blackness, the kind that makes you wonder if you've gone blind. The first thing that hits you is the smell. Sweet Jesus, the smell. It's a nauseating cocktail of wood smoke, unwashed bodies, animal dung, rotting straw, and something else, something metallic and unsettling, that you'll later realize is old blood soaked into the packed earth floor. You're lying on a wooden platform covered with animal furs. They're warm, you'll give them that. But they're also crawling with fleas, lice, and God knows what else. Your scalp itches, your skin crawls, and you've only been awake for 30 seconds. As your eyes adjust, you begin to make out shapes in the darkness. You're inside a longhouse, a massive rectangular building made of wood and turf. The ceiling is low, barely 6 feet high in most places, supported by massive wooden posts. In the center of the room, a long fire pit runs down the middle, though right now it's just glowing embers casting dancing shadows on the walls. Around you, other people are sleeping. A lot of other people. This isn't your private bedroom. Privacy doesn't exist here. You're sharing this space with extended family, slaves, maybe 20 or 30 people in total, all crammed into this single smoky structure. Someone near you is snoring. Someone else is coughing, a deep, wet hack that speaks of lungs filled with years of smoke inhalation. A baby cries somewhere in the darkness, and you hear a woman's tired voice shushing it. You try to sit up and immediately regret it. Your back is a mass of aches. That wooden platform might be better than sleeping on the ground, but it's not exactly a Tempur-Pedic mattress. Your muscles are sore from yesterday's labor, because everyone works here. Everyone. There are no days off, no weekends, no vacation time. The cold hits you as soon as you move away from the furs. It's early spring in Norway, which means it's still freezing. Your breath mists in front of your face. The walls of the longhouse are thick, turf and wood, but they do little to keep out the bitter Scandinavian cold. You need to pee. Desperately. But there's no bathroom, No toilet, not even a chamber pot nearby. You'll have to go outside to the designated area, which means braving the cold and possibly stepping in something unpleasant in the dark. Welcome to your first morning as a Viking, and trust me, it only gets worse from here. You fumble in the darkness for your clothes. And by clothes, I mean a rough wool tunic that hasn't been washed in. Actually, you're not sure it's ever been washed. It's stiff with accumulated sweat, smoke, and stains you'd rather not identify. There are no closets here, no dressers. Your clothing, what little you have, is either on your body or piled near your sleeping spot. The wool is coarse, scratchy against your skin. It's been made from sheep that graze on the rocky hillsides around your settlement, spun by hand, woven on a vertical loom, and sewn together with basic stitches. It's functional, not fashionable, and it itches. God, does it itch. You pull on wool trousers, equally rough, and wrap cloth around your feet before shoving them into leather shoes. These aren't shoes in the modern sense. They're more like leather bags tied around your ankles, offering minimal protection from the cold and wet. Finally, you wrap yourself in a cloak, a large rectangle of wool fastened at the shoulder with a bronze pin. It's heavy, water-resistant when dry, and absolutely essential for survival in this climate. Now for that bathroom trip. You make your way carefully through the darkness, stepping over sleeping bodies, trying not to trip over the various tools, weapons, and household items scattered on the floor. The longhouse is organized chaos. There are no rooms, no divisions. Sleeping areas, working areas, storage areas, all blend together in one massive communal space. You reach the door, a massive wooden affair that's more gap than solid wood, and push it open. The cold outside air hits you like a physical blow. It's that deep, penetrating cold that makes your bones ache and your lungs burn when you breathe. The sky is just beginning to lighten in the east. Dawn comes late this far north, and it's still more dark than light. But there's enough illumination to see the settlement around you. It's not much a cluster of longhouses, similar to the one you just left, scattered across a narrow valley between steep mountains. Smoke rises from holes in their turf roofs, the only sign that people are stirring within. Beyond the houses, you can see the dark shapes of barns and storage buildings, and beyond that, the glittering surface of a fjord, a narrow finger of sea reaching deep into the mountains. The settlement sits on a thin strip of land between mountain and sea. That's the reality of Norway. Only about 3% of the land is suitable for farming. The rest is mountains, forests, and rocks. This geography, more than anything else, explains why Vikings took to the sea. There simply wasn't enough good land at home. You make your way to the designated toilet area, which is really just a spot behind the barns where everyone goes. There's no structure, no privacy, just a place where the ground is permanently stained and the smell is overwhelming. You do your business quickly, trying not to think about the complete lack of toilet paper or any form of hygiene. What do you use instead? Moss, if you can find it, wool scraps, your hand, and then wipe it on the grass. It's disgusting, but it's life, and you'll do this every single day for the rest of your existence. As you're finishing up, you notice something that makes your blood run cold. On a post near the barn, there's a human skull. It's weathered, bleached by sun and rain, and it's definitely human. You'll learn later that it's the skull of a thrall, a slave who tried to escape last year. He was caught, killed, and his head was mounted as a warning to others. Welcome to Viking justice. It's swift, brutal, and very, very public. You make your way back to the longhouse, your feet already numb from the cold ground. Inside, people are beginning to stir. Someone has added wood to the fire pit, and flames are now leaping up, casting better light through the interior. You can finally see your surroundings clearly. The longhouse is impressive in its way, maybe 60 feet long and 20 feet wide, with walls curving slightly inward as they rise to the roof. The roof itself is covered in turf, which provides insulation, though clumps of grass and sometimes flowers grow from it. The floor is packed earth, worn smooth by countless feet, but still dirt. In wet weather, it turns to mud. In dry weather, it's dust. It's never really clean. Along both walls are the sleeping platforms, raised wooden areas covered with furs and wool. During the day, these become seating areas where people work. At night, they're communal beds where multiple family members sleep together for warmth. The center of the longhouse is dominated by that long fire pit, where cooking happens, heat is provided, and people gather. The smoke from the fire is supposed to rise through a hole in the roof, but in reality, much of it just hangs in the air, creating a perpetual haze that stings your eyes and coats everything in a thin layer of soot. Looking around, you can now see the other inhabitants of this longhouse. There's the Jarl, the chieftain, a grizzled man of maybe 40 who looks 60, his face weathered by decades of harsh climate and harder living. His wife, the lady of the house, is already up and directing the thralls, the slaves, to begin preparing the morning meal. There are several free men and their families, some of whom are the Jarl's brothers or cousins. Viking society is intensely clan-based. Your identity comes from your family, your lineage. You're not just Eric, you're Eric Thorson, son of Thor. And if your father or grandfather did something noteworthy, that becomes part of your identity too. Then there are the thralls, easily identified by their simpler clothing, and the iron collar some of them wear. These are slaves, people captured in raids or born into servitude. They do the hardest, most unpleasant work, and their lives are, in a word, hellish. One of the thralls, a woman who looks to be in her 30s but is probably only 20, is already working the quern, a stone hand mill used to grind grain into flour. It's back-breaking work, and she'll do it for hours. Her hands are deformed from years of this labor, the bones and joints swollen and twisted. Another thrall, a young man, is hauling water from the nearby stream. He makes multiple trips, filling large wooden containers. There's no running water here. Every drop used for cooking, drinking, or the rare washing must be carried by hand. An older thrall woman is tending the fire. Feeding it carefully controlled amounts of wood fire is precious here. It's needed for cooking, warmth, and light. But wood, while relatively available in this forested land, still requires significant labor to gather, cut, and split. You don't waste it. The free people of the household are beginning their own tasks. The women are bringing out looms and spindles. Textile production is a constant task. Everyone needs clothing, and it all must be made by hand from sheep's wool. It takes hundreds of hours to produce a single outfit. The men are checking tools and weapons. Even in peacetime, weapons are always close at hand. A sword hangs on the wall near the Jarl's sleeping area. Axes, both for fighting and for woodcutting, lean against posts. Spears are stacked in a corner. You're hungry, really hungry. Your stomach is cramping with hunger in a way that modern people rarely experience. You realize you're always hungry here. There's never quite enough food, especially in late winter and early spring before the new crops come in. The morning meal is being prepared, and by meal, I mean a thin gruel made from barley, maybe with some dried fish thrown in if you're lucky. There's no bacon and eggs, no toast, no coffee. Just a watery porridge that will leave you still feeling hungry, but give you enough energy to work through the morning. The food is ladled out into wooden bowls. There are no individual place settings. People eat where they sit, often sharing bowls. Spoons are carved from wood or bone. Forks don't exist. You eat with your fingers for anything solid. You take your bowl of gruel and sit on one of the platforms. The gruel is bland, slightly gritty from bits of grain that weren't ground fine enough and lukewarm. But you eat it anyway, because this might be all you get until evening. As you eat, you watch the social dynamics of the longhouse the Jarl and his wife eat first and get slightly larger portions. This isn't greed, it's hierarchy. In Viking society, your status determines everything, including how much you eat. The free men and their families eat next, then the children. And finally, the thralls get whatever is left, which often isn't much. You notice the thrall woman who was grinding grain earlier gets maybe half a bowl. She eats it quickly, mechanically, without any sign of enjoyment. It's just fuel. After the meal, the real work of the day begins. And in a Viking settlement, there's always work, always. The Jarl announces the day's tasks. Some men will go fishing in the fjord. Others will tend the livestock, a few cattle, more sheep, some pigs and chickens. A group will go into the forest to cut timber for repairs to the longhouse roof. Another group will work the fields, which are just beginning to be planted for the summer growing season. The women have their own endless list of tasks: more textile work, preparing food for later meals, making butter and cheese, preserving what little meat is available, tending gardens, watching children and the thralls. They do whatever no one else wants to do. The hardest, filthiest, most dangerous work all falls to them. You're assigned to go with the fishing crew. You gather your things, a wool cloak for warmth, a knife at your belt, which every free man carries, and follow the group down to the shore where the boats are kept, the boats. Now here's something the Vikings actually did excel at. Their ships and boats are genuinely impressive pieces of technology. Even the small fishing boat you're about to get into is a work of art. It's clinker built with overlapping planks that give it flexibility in rough seas. The planks are thin but strong, split from oak logs rather than sawed, which follows the grain of the wood and makes them less likely to crack. The boat is maybe 20 feet long, open to the elements, with a few cross benches for rowers. There's a single mast that can be raised for a small sail when the wind is favorable. It's graceful, efficient, and utterly terrifying when you realize you're about to venture onto the cold, gray waters of the Norwegian Sea in this tiny wooden shell. 6 of you climb into the boat. The thrall who hauled water this morning is among you. He'll do the rowing while the free men fish. That's how it works. You push off from the shore, and immediately the cold intensifies. The wind coming off the water cuts through your wool clothing like it's not even there. The thrall begins rowing, his movements practiced and efficient, despite the fact that his hands must be numb within minutes. The fjord stretches out before you. Dark water reflecting the gray sky, mountains rise on both sides, their peaks still covered in snow. It's beautiful in a stark, harsh way, but it's also unforgiving. If you fall into this water, you'll be dead from hypothermia in minutes. One of the free men, a grizzled warrior named Olaf, is baiting hooks with pieces of dried fish. The fishing lines are simple, made from braided horsehair, with hooks carved from bone. There's no advanced tackle here, no reels, just hand lines that you drop over the side and hope for the best. The cod should be running, Olaf says, his voice rough from years of shouting over wind and waves. If Njord favors us, we'll have a good catch. Njord is the Norse god of the sea and wind. The Vikings are a deeply superstitious people, constantly worried about offending their gods. Every voyage, no matter how short, is a gamble that requires divine favor. You drop your line over the side, feeling the weight of the bone hook descending into the dark water. The boat rocks gently on the swells. The only sounds are the splash of water against the hull, the creak of wood, and the occasional call of a seabird. Fishing is cold, wet, boring work. You might sit here for hours, hands cramping around the line, hoping for a bite. It's not the romantic adventure you might have imagined, but it's necessary. Fish is a staple of the Viking diet, especially in coastal areas like this. Dried fish can be stored for months, providing protein through the long winter when nothing grows. After perhaps an hour, you feel a tug on your line. You pull up, hand over hand, and there's resistance. Something is on the hook. You haul it in, and a cod, maybe 2 feet long, breaks the surface. Olaf grabs it, clubs it on the head with a wooden mallet, and tosses it into the bottom of the boat where it flops and dies. This process repeats throughout the morning. Some casts catch nothing. Others bring up fish. The thrall continues rowing, keeping the boat positioned over what the experienced fishermen know are good spots. By midday, you've caught maybe a dozen fish. It's a decent haul, enough to feed the household for a day or two. But you're frozen. Your hands are cramped and cut from the rough fishing line, and you're soaked from spray and the occasional wave that breaks over the low sides of the boat. Enough, Olaf finally declares. Back to shore. The thrall rows you back, his face completely blank, despite the fact that he's been rowing almost continuously for hours in freezing conditions. When you reach the shore, he'll eat last and least. This is his life. This is what it means to be a slave in the Viking Age. You drag the boat up onto the beach and carry the fish back to the longhouse. The women immediately set to work, gutting and preparing them. Some will be eaten today. Most will be split open, salted and hung in the smoke from the longhouse fire to preserve them. As the fish are being prepared, you notice something that turns your stomach. The guts and other waste are being tossed into a pit not far from the longhouse. It's a festering mess of fish remains, vegetable scraps, and other organic waste. The smell is incredible, and it attracts rats. Rats are everywhere in Viking settlements. They live in the thatch roofs, in the walls, in the storage areas. They eat the grain stores, spread disease, and generally make life more miserable. But there's no effective way to control them. Cats exist but are rare and not yet widely used for pest control. The afternoon is spent on various tasks. You help repair a section of fence that keeps the livestock contained. It's simple work, but it's cold, and your hands are still numb from the morning's fishing. As you work, you can see other members of the community going about their business. Children, those old enough to work but not yet full adults, are herding sheep on the hillside. They're dressed in miniature versions of adult clothing, and they already have that weathered, worn look that everyone here shares. A pair of women are working at a large loom set up outside one of the long houses. Weaving is done standing up at vertical looms, and it's physically demanding work. They chat as they work, gossiping about people in the settlement. You catch fragments of their conversation. Someone's daughter is of marriageable age. Someone else's son was injured in a brawl at the last gathering. A thrall from a neighboring settlement tried to escape and was caught and mutilated as punishment. This last bit is discussed casually, matter-of-factly, as if they were talking about the weather. Violence is so commonplace here that it barely registers as noteworthy. As the sun begins to set, which happens early this far north, people drift back to the longhouse. The evening meal is being prepared. It's similar to the morning meal, but with the addition of some of the fresh fish you caught earlier. The fish is being boiled in a large iron cauldron that hangs over the fire. Vegetables, mostly root vegetables like turnips and onions that were stored from last harvest, are added to make a stew. There's no seasoning beyond salt, which is precious and used sparingly. The resulting stew is bland but filling. As darkness falls completely, the longhouse becomes the center of life. Everyone gathers around the fire pit. The evening meal is served, and people eat with more leisure than the rushed morning meal allowed. After eating, this is when the social life of the Vikings happens. Stories are told. News is shared. The Jarl settles disputes between members of the household. One of the older men, a warrior who raided in his youth but is now too old for such adventures, begins telling a story. It's about a raid he participated in years ago, attacking a monastery in England. The Christians were rich, he says, his eyes gleaming in the firelight. They kept gold and silver in their churches, and they had no warriors to protect them, just monks in robes. He describes the raid in vivid detail. The long ships arriving at dawn, the monks' terror as armed men burst into their sanctuary, the looting of everything valuable, the capture of monks to be sold as thralls. He tells this story with pride, with nostalgia. There's no sense of shame or remorse. In Viking culture, raiding is honorable. It's how men prove their worth and gain wealth. The fact that it involves killing and enslaving people is simply how things are done. The younger men listen raptly. They want their own raiding adventures. They want to prove themselves in battle and return with silver and glory. But the older man's story takes a darker turn. Harald Svensson was with us on that raid, he says, his tone shifting. Big man, strong as an ox. He took a blow to the leg from a Christian axe. We bandaged it, thought it was fine. He pauses, and everyone knows what's coming. 3 days later, the wound had festered. His leg swelled to twice its size, turned black. We could smell the rot. He was screaming in pain, begging the gods for mercy. Another pause. We tried to cut off the leg, used a sharp axe and a lot of mead to dull the pain. But it was too late. The poison had spread. He died anyway, thrashing and screaming, calling for his mother like a child. This is the reality of Viking warfare. Even minor wounds can turn fatal. There's no understanding of infection or bacteria, no antibiotics. A small cut can kill you through sepsis, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. The story has sobered the mood. Death is a constant presence in this world. Everyone in this longhouse has lost multiple family members. Infant mortality is staggering, maybe 50% or more. Women frequently die in childbirth. Men die from injuries, violence, or disease. The old rarely make it past 50. As the fire burns down, people begin to drift toward their sleeping areas. There's no evening entertainment like we know it. No books, no TV, no smartphones. When the sun sets, there's nothing to do but sleep. You make your way back to your sleeping platform, strip off your damp, smoky clothing down to a simple wool undertunic, and crawl under the furs. Bodies press close on either side. Privacy doesn't exist here. You'll sleep with other people's elbows in your back, their feet near your face, their snoring in your ears. The fire is banked for the night, leaving just enough coals to restart in the morning. The longhouse grows dark and cold. You can hear the wind outside, whistling through gaps in the walls. Somewhere in the darkness, a baby cries. A couple is having quiet sex, trying and failing to be discreet. Someone has indigestion and is passing gas repeatedly. This is your life now. This is what it means to be a Viking. Not a heroic warrior sailing to glorious battle, but a cold, hungry person trying to survive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. As you drift towards sleep, you think about tomorrow. More fishing probably, more cold, more hunger, more backbreaking work. And if you're lucky, you won't get injured or sick, because if you do, there's no doctor, no hospital, no safety net, just folk remedies that may or may not work, and the hope that the gods favor you. The romanticism of the Viking age has fully evaporated. This isn't an adventure, it's an endurance test, and you've only survived one day.